Let us go back to where it all began, before the stone, before the dust, before the legends. We are traveling back 4,500 years to the banks of the Nile. It is late summer. The Egyptians called this season Akhet, the inundation. If you look out at the landscape now, you won't see the dry yellow sands you might expect. Instead, the world is a vast shimmering mirror of water. The river has swollen, rising up to embrace the land, turning the valley into a lush green marshland teeming with life. The air here is different. It is thick and heavy with humidity. It clings to your skin, warm and enveloping. If you take a deep breath, you can smell the richness of the black mud, that fertile earth brought down from the mountains of Africa. It mixes with the sweet, drowsy scent of blue lotus flowers opening in the twilight, and the faint, smoky smell of cooking fires drifting from the villages nearby. The sun is beginning to set, casting long violet shadows across the water. The heat of the day is finally breaking, replaced by a gentle breeze that rustles through the tall papyrus reeds at the water's edge. Swish, swish, swish. It is a soothing, constant rhythm. Standing on a high limestone balcony overlooking this water is a man. This is Khufu. To history, he is a remote, godlike figure, a tyrant who moved mountains. But tonight, he is simply a man. He is dressed in a simple robe of white linen, the fabric sheer and soft against his skin, fluttering slightly in the wind. He is barefoot, his feet connected to the cool, polished floor of the palace. He walks to the edge of the balcony and places his hands on the stone railing. The stone is still warm, radiating the heat it absorbed during the blazing day. It feels solid and grounding beneath his palms. Khufu looks out at the horizon. The setting sun has turned the floodwaters into liquid gold, a fire that stretches as far as the eye can see. It is a moment of perfect stillness. The only sounds are the distant calling of waterfowl settling in for the night, and the rhythmic lapping of the river against the palace walls below. As the light fades, the sky turns a deep, bruised purple, and then, finally, into the velvet black of night. And then come the stars. In the ancient desert, without the haze of modern cities, the stars are terrifyingly bright. They hang low and heavy in the sky, like lanterns suspended by invisible strings. The Egyptians called them the imperishable ones, the stars that never set, the souls that never die. Khufu tilts his head back. He traces the shape of Orion, the hunter, striding across the Milky Way. To him, this is not just a pattern of lights. It is the celestial body of Osiris, the Lord of the Dead. It is the destination. Standing there in the dark, a heavy thought settles on Khufu's shoulders. He looks down at his own hands. He looks back at the wooden beams of his palace roof. He looks at the mud brick homes of his people dotting the distant mounds. He knows the truth. Everything down here is fragile. Wood rots. Mud crumbles. Linen decays. Even the flesh of a king is temporary. The river gives, and the river takes away. He closes his eyes for a moment, listening to the wind. He wants to defy this cycle. He wants to build something that the river cannot wash away, something that time itself cannot erode. He turns his gaze toward the Giza Plateau. Right now, in his time, it is just a desolate ridge of rock rising above the floodplain. It is empty, silent, just wind and limestone and jackals. But in the moonlight, Khufu sees something else. In his mind's eye, the empty plateau vanishes. Instead, he sees a mountain, a perfect geometric mountain rising from the earth. He envisions it clad in pure white Tura limestone, polished until it shines like a second sun. He imagines the apex, the very top, capped in gold or electrum, catching the first rays of dawn before the rest of the world has even woken up. He visualizes the weight of it, millions of tons of stone, not mud, not wood, but stone, the bones of the earth. He imagines the interior. He mentally walks through the solid rock, carving out a space for himself, a chamber deep in the heart of the structure. He imagines the silence in there, a silence so profound, so heavy, that it protects the soul forever. No wind, no flood, no noise, just eternal peace. The vision is so clear, so real that he can almost hear the sounds of the future. He can almost hear the chanting of the gangs of workers, the heave-ho of men pulling on ropes, the smell of sweat and garlic and dust, the grinding sound of copper saws cutting through rock. It is a symphony of construction that hasn't started yet, playing in his mind. A servant steps quietly into the room behind him to light an oil lamp. The soft flicker of the flame brings Khufu back to the present. The smell of olive oil and burning wick drifts through the air. Khufu turns away from the balcony. He runs his hand over the smooth limestone wall of his chamber. The decision has been made. The dream is no longer just a dream, it is a command. He sits down on his chair of ebony and ivory. The night is fully here now. The crickets are singing their rhythmic chorus outside. The Nile continues its endless flow to the sea. The world sleeps. But tomorrow, the messengers will be sent out. Tomorrow, the architects will be summoned. Tomorrow, the first mark will be made in the sand. The age of the horizon has begun. The vision of the king has left the quiet of the palace balcony. It has traveled across the water and struck the earth of the Giza Plateau. The silence of the desert is gone. In its place, a massive, coordinated machine has sprung to life. We move forward in time now. The preparations are over. The construction of the Great Pyramid is fully underway. Imagine standing on the edge of the plateau at mid-morning. The first thing that hits you is the light. The sun reflects off the limestone bedrock and the white desert sand, creating a brilliance that forces you to squint. The world here is bleached white and gold. The air is dry, a stark contrast to the humidity of the riverbank. It smells of crushed rock, dry heat, and the faint copper scent of tools working against stone. But the most overpowering sensation is the rhythm. Close your eyes and listen. It isn't a noise of confusion. It is a steady, hypnotic beat. Clink, clink, clink. It sounds like a giant metronome. This is the sound of copper chisels striking limestone, thousands of them. We travel across the river to the Tura quarries. This is where the fine white casing stones are being harvested. These are the stones that will make the pyramid shine. The air here is filled with a fine white powder. It hangs in the sunlight like a mist, coating the workers' skin until they look like statues themselves. The men working here are not the slaves of Hollywood movies. They are not chained. They are organized, strong, and deeply focused. They work in gangs with names that show their pride, names like the Drunkards of Menkaure or the Friends of Khufu. Watch a group of them now. They are cutting a massive block from the bedrock. There are no iron tools here. Iron hasn't been discovered yet. They are using copper, which is a relatively soft metal. This means the work requires patience, not just brute force. They strike the rock, then pause to sharpen the tool, then strike again. It is a slow, meditative process. To split the rock, they drive wooden wedges into cracks, then soak them with water. As the wood expands, it pushes the rock apart with a deep, groaning crack that echoes off the canyon walls. It is the sound of the earth yielding to human will. Once the stone is free, the real journey begins. We follow a massive 2-ton block as it is levered onto a wooden sledge. There are no wheels here. Wheels would sink into the sand. The sledge is a heavy wooden frame, polished smooth on the bottom. Ropes made of twisted papyrus fiber, thick as a man's arm, are attached to the front. A team of 20 men grabs the ropes. They don't just pull randomly. They wait for the chant. A foreman stands on the block, clapping his hands. 1, 2, pull. As they heave, a single man at the front of the sledge leans down and pours water from a jar onto the sand directly in front of the runners. This is the secret. The wet sand becomes stiff and slick, reducing the friction by half. The sledge glides forward with a heavy, rushing sound. Shh, thud. Pour, heave, slide. Pour, heave, slide. It is a trance. The men breathe in unison. The sound of their bare feet gripping the earth creates a soft, shuffling percussion. They move the mountain piece by piece, fueled by bread, onions, and thick, cloudy beer provided by the state. You can smell the bakeries from here, thousands of loaves baking in clay ovens to feed this army of builders. As we move up the causeway to the pyramid itself, the scale becomes overwhelming. The structure is rising. It currently looks like a flat-topped hill made of yellow limestone blocks. A massive ramp spirals around its perimeter, clinging to the side like a vine. Dust swirls in the updrafts. The heat radiates off the stones, creating shimmering waves in the air. Yet, amidst the sweat and the dust, there is an incredible obsession with order. We call it Ma'at, the ancient Egyptian concept of truth and balance. Look closely at the corner of the pyramid. A master surveyor is standing there. He's holding a simple tool, a plumb bob, just a weight on a string, and a square. He is checking the angle. It must be perfect, not close enough, but perfect. The casing stones are fitted together with such precision that you can't slide a piece of paper or a hair between them. They don't use mortar to hold the weight. The fit is so tight that the stones fuse together. It is a level of craftsmanship that seems impossible on this scale. They are knitting a mountain together, stone by stone. As the afternoon wears on, the shadows begin to stretch. The white, blinding light softens into a golden haze. The temperature begins to drop, and the rhythm of the chisels slows down. The foreman signals the end of the shift. The noise stops. The silence rushes back in to fill the void. The workers make their way down the ramps, heading toward the workers' village below. Now the smells change. The scent of stone dust is replaced by the smell of roasting meat and wood smoke. Laughter replaces the chanting. These men are tired, their muscles aching, but there is a sense of accomplishment. They look back at the pyramid silhouetted against the purple evening sky. It is higher today than it was yesterday. Night falls over the construction site. The ramps are empty. The sledges sit still in the sand. But the pyramid is not asleep. Under the starlight, the massive stones settle. The structure groans softly as it adjusts to its own weight. A deep, resonant vibration that you can feel through the soles of your feet if you stand near the base. It is a living thing now. Khufu's dream has become a solid, geometric reality. The foundation is set. The core is rising. But the true mystery lies not in the stones we can see, but in the spaces left behind, the hollows hidden deep inside the rock. The architects are preparing for the next phase. They are about to carve out the heart of the pyramid. We are leaving the sun behind. We have watched the workers haul the stones under the open sky, but now we are going to follow the architects into the dark. We are entering the Great Pyramid while it is still under construction. Imagine stepping off the bright, noisy ramp and ducking into a narrow tunnel cut into the north face of the structure. The moment you cross the threshold, the world changes. The heat of the desert vanishes instantly, replaced by a cool, heavy stillness. The temperature here never changes. It stays at a constant 20 degrees Celsius, roughly 68 degrees Fahrenheit. It feels like entering a cave or a cathedral. The light of the sun cannot reach here. We are guided only by the flickering light of oil lamps and torches. The flames cast long, dancing shadows against the walls. The smell is distinct. It smells of stale air, burnt linen wicks, and the sharp mineral scent of cut granite. We are walking up the ascending passage. It is tight and cramped. You have to hunch over to walk here. The walls are smooth, polished limestone, cool to the touch. The sound of your own breathing seems loud in your ears. In, out, in, out. Every footstep echoes, bouncing off the hard surfaces. Suddenly, the space opens up. We have reached the Grand Gallery. This is an architectural marvel hidden in the dark. It is a massive, soaring hall that stretches upward into the gloom. The ceiling is so high it gets lost in the shadows. The walls are corbelled, meaning each layer of stone steps inward slightly as it goes up, creating a narrow slough at the very top. It feels industrial, like the inside of a great machine, and in a way, it is. The architects designed this space not just for grandeur, but for function. It is believed this gallery was used to store the massive granite blocking stones that would eventually slide down to seal the tomb forever. We keep climbing. The air gets thinner, stiller. We are reaching the heart of the pyramid, the center of the artificial mountain. Finally, we stoop down one last time and enter the king's chamber. This room is different. The walls here are not white limestone. They are red granite brought all the way from Aswan, hundreds of miles to the south. The stone is dark, rich, and incredibly hard. The blocks are enormous, perfectly smooth, and fitted together so tightly that they look like a single piece of rock. The silence here is physical. It presses against your ears. This room was designed to be the most silent place on earth. In the center of the room sits a sarcophagus. It isn't a coffin brought in through the door. It's too big for that. It was placed here first, and the pyramid was built around it. It is carved from a single block of chocolate-colored granite. When you tap it, it rings like a bell. The architects and priests stand here in the flickering light. They are checking the alignments. This isn't just a tomb, it's a launch pad. They point to two small shafts, squared tunnels about the size of a handkerchief, rising up from the north and south walls. These aren't for air, they are for the soul. The northern shaft points directly to the pole star, the star that never moves, representing eternity. The southern shaft points to Orion, the symbol of resurrection. The belief is literal. When the king dies, his soul, his ba, will travel up this narrow shaft and blast out into the cosmos to join the gods. Standing here, you can feel the weight of the stone above you. Millions of tons of rock pressing down, but the room doesn't collapse. The engineers have built a series of relieving chambers above the ceiling, layers of stone with air gaps between them to disperse the crushing weight away from the center. It is brilliant engineering, hidden where no one will ever see it. The priests burn incense, myrrh and frankincense. The smoke rises in straight lines, undisturbed by any draft. The smell is spicy and resinous, sticking to the granite walls. They chant low, rhythmic spells from the pyramid texts. The sound vibrates against the hard stone walls, creating a strange, resonating hum. This room is an instrument tuned to the frequency of the afterlife. It feels safe here. It feels removed from time. Outside, empires will rise and fall. Wars will be fought. Storms will rage. But inside this chamber, in this womb of granite, nothing will change. It is a bubble of eternity, waiting for its occupant. Khufu's body is not here yet, but his space is ready. The machine is primed. We turn back, leaving the chamber, the torchlight receding into the darkness. As we walk back down the gallery, the silence rushes back in to fill the space behind us. We emerge back into the blinding sunlight of the plateau, gasping for fresh air. But the feeling of that room stays with you. The feeling that deep inside the rock, something is waiting. The Great Pyramid is finished, but the story of the plateau is not over. Khufu will pass, and his son will take the throne. And with him, a new guardian will rise from the sand. Time moves differently in the desert. The years bleed into decades, and the decades into centuries. Khufu, the great gilder, has passed into the afterlife. His great pyramid now stands complete, a shining white mountain reflecting the sun. But the plateau is not done. A new king sits on the throne. His name is Khafre. He is Khufu's son, and he has returned to Giza to continue his father's legacy. He is building his own pyramid right next to the first one. It looks slightly taller because it sits on higher ground, but it respects the father's work by being just a little bit smaller in volume. But Khafre's greatest contribution isn't a pyramid. It is something far more mysterious. We are walking down the causeway, the long ceremonial path that leads from the pyramid down to the valley temple near the river. To the right of the path, there is a massive outcrop of limestone bedrock. It's a natural hill, a nuisance really, left over from the quarrying days. It blocks the view. Most builders would have just cut it down and used the blocks, but the architects see a shape hidden inside that rock. They see a beast waiting to be released. This is the birth of the Great Sphinx. Unlike the pyramids, which were built up, the Sphinx is being carved down. It is sculpture on a monumental scale. The workers are digging a deep trench around this limestone hill, isolating it. Then, master sculptors begin to chip away at the rock. Imagine the sound. It's different from the rhythmic clacking of the pyramid construction. This is the delicate tap, tap, tap of fine chisels. The air is filled with white dust that coats the eyelashes of the carvers. They are peeling away the layers of rock to reveal muscle, bone, and fur. They start with the head. It is the head of a man wearing the royal Nemes headcloth, the striped hood of the pharaoh. The face is Khafre's face. It is wide, authoritative, and calm. The eyes are open, staring directly east toward the rising sun. Then comes the body. It stretches out behind the head, massive and powerful. It is the body of a lion. The paws are extended forward, claws retracted. The tail curls around the right haunch. It is the ultimate symbol of kingship, the intelligence of a human, combined with the raw, terrifying power of a lion. Now, here is something most people don't know. If you look at the Sphinx today, you see beige, eroded stone. But if you stood there 4,500 years ago, you would see a riot of color. The Sphinx was painted. The face was painted a deep, vibrant red, the color of sunburned skin. The stripes of the headcloth were likely blue and yellow, bright lapis lazuli and gold. The eyebrows and the cosmetic lines around the eyes were painted black. It wasn't a ghost in the desert. It was a vivid, living god. It would have been visible for miles, glowing against the sand. As you stand in its shadow, you realize just how big it is. It's as long as a city block and as high as a 6-story building. You feel very small standing between its paws. The sun begins to set behind the pyramids. This is the magic hour. The shadows of the 3 pyramids stretch out across the sand, reaching toward the Nile. The Sphinx is now in silhouette, a black shape against the orange sky. It is called Hor-em-eket, Horus in the horizon. It is the guardian of the Giza necropolis. There is a feeling of unease here. The pyramids are geometric, mathematical, logical, but the Sphinx is primal. It represents the mysteries of the earth. Legends begin to whisper almost immediately. The workers tell stories around their campfires. They say the Sphinx is not just a statue, but a sentinel. They say it guards forbidden knowledge. There are rumors of hollow spaces beneath it. The rock of the plateau is like Swiss cheese, full of natural fissures and caves. The storytellers say that Thoth, the god of wisdom, hid his scrolls of knowledge, the hall of records, deep beneath the lion's paws, waiting for a future civilization to find them. It's likely just a legend, born from the eerie silence of the place. But when the wind howls through the trench around the Sphinx, making a low, moaning sound, you can understand why people believe it. The statue feels alive. It feels like it is watching you. The twilight deepens. The torches are lit in the valley temple nearby. The Sphinx continues to stare east. It is waiting for the sun to rise again. It watches the stars rotate overhead. Orion, Sirius, the Big Dipper. It has seen the first stone laid. It will see the last priest leave. It will see the sand rise up and bury it up to its neck. It will see armies from Greece, Rome, France, and England march past. It will see tourists with cameras. But for now, in this ancient twilight, it is brand new. The paint is fresh. The eyes are sharp. The nose is still there. The guardian has taken its post, and the Giza plateau is complete. The stage is set for the final act of the afterlife. We have seen the rise of the two giants, Khufu and Khafre. Now, the era of the great builders is beginning to wind down. The third and final pyramid of Giza belongs to Menkaure. If you look at it today, it seems small compared to the others. It's less than half the height of the Great Pyramid. Some might say the kingdom was running out of money or resources. But if you look closer, you see something else. It wasn't about size anymore. It was about quality. Menkaure decided to change the recipe. Instead of covering his entire pyramid in white limestone, he encased the bottom 16 layers in red granite. This stone didn't come from the nearby quarries. It came from Aswan, over 500 miles to the south. This is the hardest stone the Egyptians worked with. It's dense, heavy, and incredibly difficult to cut. Moving these blocks down the Nile on barges was a logistical nightmare. Imagine the sight of those barges, heavy, flat-bottomed boats drifting slowly down the river, carrying blocks of crimson stone that weighed as much as 20 tons each. When the sun hit them, they didn't shine white, they glowed red, like blood or fire. It was a statement of power. But why go to all this trouble? Why pile up millions of tons of rock in the desert? To understand the pyramids, we have to look away from the stones and look into the mind of the ancient Egyptians. We have to look at their map of death. For us, death is often seen as an ending. For them, it was a dangerous journey. It was a geography you had to navigate, filled with gates, demons, and tests. And the pyramid was the machine that helped you survive it. Let's visualize what they believed was happening while the body lay silent in the tomb. They believed the soul, the Ka, woke up in the Duat, the underworld. It wasn't a dark, scary hell. It was a strange mirror image of Egypt, but filled with supernatural challenges. To get through, you needed a guidebook. We call it the Book of the Dead, but the Egyptians called it the Book of Coming Forth by Day. The ultimate destination was the Hall of Two Truths. Imagine walking into a vast hall. The ceiling is supported by columns of fire. At the far end sits Osiris, the Lord of the Dead, wrapped in white linen, his skin green to represent rebirth. But before you can reach him, you have to pass the final test. This is the weighing of the heart. In the center of the room stands a great scale, like a balance you'd see in a market. On one side of the scale, Anubis, the jackal-headed god of judgment, places your heart. The Egyptians believed the heart was the center of intelligence and emotion, the record of every deed you ever did. On the other side of the scale, he places a single ostrich feather. This is the feather of Ma'at. Ma'at is the most important concept in ancient Egypt. It translates to truth, balance, order, and justice. It is the opposite of chaos. The test is simple. If your heart is heavy with guilt, lies, or cruelty, it will tip the scale. It will sink. Waiting beside the scale is Amet, a monster that is part crocodile, part lion, and part hippo. If the heart is heavy, Amet eats it, and you cease to exist. That was the true fear, not hell, but non-existence. But if you lived a good life, if you fed the hungry, if you didn't steal, if you didn't cause pain, your heart would be light. It would balance perfectly with the feather. Thump thump, silence.
the scale holds steady. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of writing, records the result on his scroll. He is true of voice. The test is passed. The gates open. Beyond the hall lies the field of reeds. This was their version of heaven. It wasn't clouds and harps. It was an idealized version of Egypt. It was a land where the crops grew tall without effort, where the Nile always flooded just enough, where you could hunt and fish and drink beer with your ancestors forever. This is why they built the pyramids. They weren't just monuments to ego. They were resurrection machines designed to launch the king through that dangerous underworld and land him safely in that eternal field. The red granite of Menkare's pyramid was meant to protect that journey. It was a fortress for the soul. Back on the plateau, the construction fires are dying down. The last chisel strikes have been struck. The three pyramids now stand together, aligned perfectly with the stars. The noise of the workforce begins to fade. The villages are packed up. The barges sail back south. The golden age of construction is over. Now the plateau belongs to the wind, the sand, and the silence.
The noise is gone. The shouting of the foremen, the scrape of the sledges, the rhythm of the chisels, it has all faded into history. The great construction project is over. The workers have gone home to their villages in the delta. The fires in the bakeries have gone cold. We are now moving forward in time. Not years, but centuries, millennia. The Giza Plateau, once a bustling industrial zone, has become a city of the dead. It is silent. The desert is patient. It waits. And slowly, relentlessly, it begins to reclaim what is its own. The wind blows from the west, carrying millions of tiny grains of sand. They pile up against the base of the Great Pyramid. They drift into the trenches around the Sphinx. Year by year, the sand rises. The Sphinx, the great guardian, is slowly buried. First, its paws disappear. Then, its body. Eventually, only its head remains above the dunes, staring out across a sea of gold, like a swimmer trying to keep his head above water. It will stay like that for thousands of years, a mysterious head in the sand, fueling legends for travelers who pass by. The pyramids themselves begin to change. Remember, they were once smooth and white. They shone like mirrors. But time is cruel. An earthquake hits Cairo in the medieval era. It shakes the ground violently. The beautiful white casing stones, those polished limestone blocks, crackle and loosen. People from the city below come to the plateau. They don't see a holy site anymore. They see a quarry. They strip the white stones off the pyramids to build mosques and palaces in Cairo. Layer by layer, the smooth skin is peeled away, leaving the rough, stepped core that we see today. The gold capstone at the very top? Gone, stolen, or lost to the ages. But despite the theft, despite the erosion, despite the earthquakes, the mountains remain. Let's stand there now, in the present day, in the dead of night. The tourists are gone. The buses have left. The city lights of Cairo glow in the distance, a noisy, chaotic modern world. But here on the plateau, there is a heavy, ancient peace. Walk up to the base of the Great Pyramid. Reach out and touch the stone.
It's rough, weathered, warm from the day's sun. You are touching the same stone that a worker touched 4,500 years ago. You are connecting with a human hand across the abyss of time. Look up. The silhouette of the pyramid cuts a perfect black triangle out of the starry sky. It is massive. It blocks out the world. It makes you feel small, but in a good way. It reminds you that some things endure. The builders, Khufu, Khafre, Menkaure, they are long gone. Their bodies were likely taken by tomb robbers centuries ago. The treasures are scattered in museums or lost in the sand. But their dream survived. Khufu wanted to conquer death. He wanted to be remembered. And here we are, 45 centuries later, talking about him. In a way, his machine worked. He achieved immortality, not of the body, but of the name. The wind picks up, swirling around the corners of the stone. It's the same wind that cooled the workers' brows. It's the same wind that eroded the Sphinx. The constellations wheel overhead. Orion rises in the south, just as it did then. The pole star sits fixed in the north, just as it did then. The desert night is cold now. The silence is profound. It's a silence that commands respect. As we leave the plateau, looking back one last time, the three pyramids stand guard in the darkness. They are the only wonders of the ancient world still standing. They are the architects of eternity. And as long as the stone stands on the sand, the echoes of that time will never truly fade.